Welcome, everyone, to our session on Fabric options for Dynamics 365 Business Central, focusing on integrating ERP solutions for business intelligence in the Microsoft Fabric ecosystem. Our agenda for today looks similar to this. First, I'll go over some introductions of who I am and who I work for, a little bit of my background and experience, as well as my company's background and experience. Then we're going to cover an introduction to Microsoft Fabric. This may be some content that you already know, and that's okay. This is very high level and more for the folks who may or may not be familiar with Fabric already. We'll cover just some of the key benefits of Fabric in the context of data warehousing, and especially when it comes to ERP and financial data, as well as Business Central specifically for that ERP. I'll cover a few use cases as well, one from Microsoft and one from ourselves, from my company. Then we'll dive into some of the integration technologies that are available in the market today for Dynamics 365 Business Central within Fabric. And then cover just a few high-level best practices for handling that data within Fabric, and then also touch briefly on some of the key benefits for data analytics and reporting within Fabric and how it relates to a data estate that includes ERP or financial data, specifically from Business Central. I should mention too, if there are any questions, there will be lots of time at the end for Q&A. If you can think of questions, I would just post them in the chat for now. I'm solo here presenting. I don't have anyone co-presenting with me to answer those questions in the chat. But if you queue them up in the chat, I'll definitely take a look at those and try to answer as many as I can during the Q&A at the end of the session. But we'll definitely have 10 to 15 minutes or more for that Q&A. So who am I? My name is Chris Hetzler. I'm a solution architect and senior manager at Eide Bailly. Prior to being here, I've been here for about 3 years now. It'll be 3 years in July. Prior to joining Eide Bailly 3 years ago, I spent 17 years with Microsoft as a developer, a tester, a program manager, a cloud solution architect, a technical sales professional, and a consultant. In my tenure there, I was primarily a developer and a tester and a program manager in the Dynamics R&D organization, focused on financial reporting and the Microsoft-supported integration between all of the ERPs and CRM at the time now, Dynamics Sales. That tenure brought me broad exposure to the Microsoft platform as a whole. And I do have expert level certifications now in Dynamics and Fabric, Power Platform, and Azure, in addition to holding master's degrees in software engineering and data science. Now, the last bullet point there points out I do have over 20 Microsoft certifications, and as applies to this conference and the Fabric conference that I just presented at a few weeks ago as well, I do have the DP 600 and 700 certifications, as well as the Dynamics 365 Business Central Developer Cert, the MBA 20. There you can see my information for connecting with me on LinkedIn. I try to answer as many questions as I can over there. Also, my blog is available there, thehetz.com/blog, and then also my company's site specifically for their Microsoft technology consulting practice at bailey.com/Microsoft. So who is Eide Bailly? You may have heard of Eide Bailly in the CPA space. We are, this slide is a bit outdated. It's from last year. It says we're a top 25 ranked CPA and business advisory firm. We're actually top 15 now. This also says 40 offices. It's over 50 offices now in, I believe, 16 states. We are a 107-year-old company. We're actually now up to about 800 million in revenue, 4,000 employees. You may have heard of us on the business advisory and CPA side, but we do have a very large technology consulting group as well. This slide says 260 plus consultants. We're actually over 300 now. We do have 4 of the 6 Microsoft Solution Partner designations. We should have 5, if not all 6, by the end of the year. Specifically for Fabric, we are a Fabric featured partner. We are certified and do host Microsoft Fabric Analyst in a Day training sessions, and we can also deliver those one-on-one with individual clients, and we certainly have done that. We do hold the Solutions Partner designation for data and AI in Azure, and we also have a specialization specifically with analytics on that Solution Partner designation. As you can see from the infographic here, we aren't necessarily specialized in one area. These are our separate specializations as you move around. So we do have consulting available in each one of these, whether it's modern workplace or data analytics and data warehousing, process automation, ERP or CRM. I'd also like to call out that for ERP, obviously we're dealing with Business Central here today, but we are also the #2 NetSuite partner, both for implementation and sales in the world. And for CRM, we do Dynamics CRM or CE or sales, but we also have a very large Salesforce consulting and customization practice as well. So our technology consulting practice is fairly platform agnostic, but we do have specializations within Microsoft, NetSuite, Salesforce as well. And if you'd like to contact Eide Bailly about business intelligence specifically, there is an app source, free app source to our assessment available out there. There's a link here that will allow you to get out there and see that. Or if you just go to Microsoft App Source and search for Eide Bailly, you should be able to find us there under consulting services and see our various offerings. So with that, we will jump into an introduction to Microsoft Fabric. This graphic is maybe just slightly outdated post the most recent Fabric conference. However, it provides a good overview of what Fabric encompasses, from OneLake storage to the serverless compute engines up to the individual different workloads between data warehousing, data science, data engineering. Fabric also has obviously the capability to mirror different data sources, which is actually a copy into Fabric from that data source. And then it also has the ability to shortcut different data sources, which isn't copying the data in, but making that data appear as though it was in Fabric and is available to all those different Fabric workloads that you see across the top. So it does provide a comprehensive data management platform, if you will. In the past, you may have had, a data warehouse built in Snowflake and Snowflake engineers over there working on that, or in Microsoft Synapse with a small subset of your data group working in those platforms, but then your analysts working in something like Tableau or Power BI to actually analyze that data. And those silos may have existed separately. Well, Fabric allows those things to be streamlined and provides a much more collaborative environment for those various groups of people. You may also have C-suite people who need dashboards or want KPIs built, and analytics folks may not have the time or access to the data to build those things. So tickets get created in various systems and fall through the cracks. That world is rapidly coming to an end with Microsoft Fabric. So some of the key benefits of Fabric: simplified data integration. So it definitely streamlines the process all the way from source to analyst. It allows you to enhance the quality of that data simply because you're operating in what I like to refer to as a single pane of glass. Your various staging environments for that data, all your ETL, everything you're doing with the data is in a single place and hopefully is being worked on by a single collaborative team. Full, obviously, Power BI support. Fabric should be the data foundation for your Power BI workloads. And it fosters that collaboration. One of the things that we've seen in our Fabric projects that has been very, very successful is it sort of organically grows up over time as more and more team members come onto the platform. They start very much speaking the same language and working with each other in a way that allows. In fact, I was just working with one of an analyst, a business analyst at one of the clients that we have migrated to Fabric, and I'll talk about them in our case study in a little bit. Yesterday, and he's actually starting to write Python code now in a Fabric notebook, and he has no Python experience, but he knows the transformations and he knows the data that he needs, and he's leveraging Copilot and the tools within Fabric to learn Python and be able to build those transformations themselves rather than getting the data engineers involved. It's been a fun journey for them and lots of our other clients to see that knowledge and user adoption grow up organically over time. So just a little bit about data warehousing. Fabric has proven itself over the last 18 or 24 months now that it's been around to be very effective for real world data warehousing scenarios, and we'll see that in the two case studies I'm going to highlight. Very tangible results in their data management. And we have a very large enterprise client that we're working with today that had a data warehouse that sort of grew up over time and is actually blended use. It has OLTP data in it, and they're doing day-to-day transactional processing in that warehouse, as well as OLAP or analytical workloads. And we're working with them now to sort of pull the analytical data out of that data warehouse, land it into a data warehouse in Fabric instead of a SQL Azure database, and turn that SQL Azure database into what it truly was meant to be, and that's the transactional database, whereas the analytical database is sitting over within Fabric. We're up to, I believe, 18 clients live on Fabric data warehouses now with all their analytics running over those. And there's many more, obviously, from other partners and from Microsoft themselves. If you go out to the Microsoft Customer Stories site and search for Fabric, there's hundreds of them out there now. And we're working on publishing a couple of our own on our site as well. The modern medallion architectures that we are implementing for these clients, as opposed to some of the things that they've done in the past, have really proven to be game changing, especially from a DevOps perspective. And you'll hear me hammer on the collaboration theme over and over through this presentation, but it's one of the key differentiators, I believe, with implementing your data warehouse and your data estate in the Fabric ecosystem. Next, we'll move on to the case studies. The one that I want to highlight from Microsoft is Aurizon. They're an Australian rail company. The two interesting pieces that have come out of this case study for me that I want to highlight are, first, the data warehousing has been actually leveraged to optimize their company supply chain. So they can actually, and their HR, so they can, by using analytics on their historical data, they can actually be more precise and more predictive about when they need to schedule crew, and they can also get ahead of maintenance costs by getting parts in that they know they're going to need in the future when costs are maybe lower from their suppliers. It's also enabled predictive maintenance through all the sensors on their various rail cars, engines, and different equipment by using the real-time analytics aspect of Fabric to stream that data in real time and have real-time analytical dashboards that allow them to see and predict potential failures and get maintenance performed on that equipment before it actually fails, resulting in increased downtime, obviously, if it does. So a case study that we are going to publish in the future, but we can certainly talk about it now, is Me1 Brands, or MePod as we refer to them. They are a large wholesaler of vaping products in the United States, and they were struggling with the data warehouse that they didn't understand. It was built on Azure Synapse, and it used a proprietary technology or a proprietary implementation from a vendor that they weren't very happy with, and they had to go back to them every time they needed any kind of maintenance or changes in their data or in their ETL processes. So once we took over their data warehousing project, as well as their Business Central implementation, we started having a discussion about Fabric and talked about how both their analysts and their engineers and even their C-suite could be more involved in the process of analyzing that data and integrating that data and visualizing that data. And they really liked the single pane of glass and the unified view that Fabric could provide to them. And in fact, this is who I was just mentioning earlier, having their analysts actually, initially they were faced, I don't want to say scared, but they were concerned about potentially having to learn how to work in Python notebooks. But now those fears have been completely alleviated, and they've very much embraced the Fabric user experience and various workspaces for getting their work done and their analysis done. And it's been really, really cool to see an explosion, if you will, of reports and insights start being disseminated to the rest of the company via Fabric. So next, let's move on to some of the options for integrating Business Central with Microsoft Fabric. So the first one that I highlight there is BC to ADLS, or Business Central to Azure Data Lake. This is an open source project available out on GitHub that we do leverage. We did leverage it for MePod, and we are leveraging it for a few other clients as well. It allows you to get up and running pretty quickly, especially if you're very familiar with customizations in Business Central apps. And if you're familiar with the original ADLS export Microsoft supported tool out of Business Central, this is built on top of that, or built in a similar fashion to that, that allows you to do scheduled extracts on the data you select, on the fields that on the tables you select, and the fields you select within those tables or columns within those tables, and land that data either in Data Lake and use Synapse, or you can land that in Fabric and use a Fabric notebook for taking that data from files and putting it into tables, and we'll look at that in a little bit. You can also enable the Dataverse integration for Business Central and then create a shortcut from Microsoft Fabric to Dataverse and have that data light up via that integration. This may not be as user-friendly for some folks that are more hands-on with Business Central, but it is built into BC, and it is quite simple. And if your organization is already leveraging the Dynamics 365 sales integration that's built into Dynamics Business Central, that is built on top of the Dataverse integration. So that Dataverse integration is already up and running if you're in that scenario, and you could easily shortcut into Fabric right away. The last scenario that we have is Business Central Web APIs. So either using the built-in out of the box web APIs, or if you have developers that are creating APIs on your data and exposing those, you can also integrate data directly into Fabric using those APIs. I'll talk about what's involved with that in just a little bit. But all three of these scenarios are things that we have done for clients and in various at various stages of their data estate journey. And it all really depends on the size of their team and their engineering, I'll say data engineering prowess and experience with data warehouses and what their goals are for data warehousing and data analytics at a business level, which one of these you choose. And they're also, it should be said, not mutually exclusive. You could certainly do combinations of these if you would like to, or if the business scenario calls for it. So first, I want to talk about BC to ADLS. This is the one that I'm most familiar with and have implemented myself for MEPOD and a few other clients. So the components within Microsoft Fabric that we leverage are pipelines, notebooks, the lakehouse, which is built on OneLake storage, as the diagram shows, a semantic model or multiple semantic models, if you want, on top of that lakehouse, those lakehouse tables specifically, and then Power BI reports that either have child semantic models based on that primary one or primary ones, or directly on that primary semantic model, all depending on what the analysts need. Normally, we just have one pipeline that runs, and that pipeline is used to schedule the notebook that comes with the solution, or the sample notebook that comes with the solution, and you are free to modify that. And I'll touch on some of the modifications that we have made for clients in that notebook. Schedules that notebook to run, and that's what handles the transformation operations on the data after it's landed in Fabric from the BC app, and then also refreshes the semantic models. Now, you certainly wouldn't have to use a pipeline. You can schedule the notebook to run, and you can schedule the models to refresh themselves. The notebook actually simplifies the data preparation and transformation process, and it streamlines the data integration and really gives you some fine-grained control over the transformation process as compared to something like using a data flow, Gen 1 or Gen 2. Down at the bottom, there's the link to the BC project that we're leveraging. There is a pretty vibrant community around the project. It does receive regular updates, and we have been keeping those apps up to date as well for our clients. So once the app is installed in Business Central, over here on the right, you'll have a brief look at, or a screenshot of, what that looks like in Business Central. It's fairly easy to configure. You can select Fabric or ADLS as the storage type, and then supply the tenant that storage type is associated to. If you select Fabric, you need to select the workspace and the lakehouse within that workspace you would like to land the data in. I strongly encourage you to use the GUIDs there for all three of those settings rather than using the name. It seems to resolve just a little bit better. Now, that was in a previous version of the app that I was having some name resolution issues. Those may have been fixed in the more recent versions. Not entirely sure about that one. You do need to create an Entra application for authentication. That's very straightforward on how to do that. And there's lots of information out there in the Business Central documentation on how to do that. This has a very intuitive interface for someone who's used to working in Business Central. And down on the bottom, you'll see a collection of tables, and you can open those individual tables and select or auto-select the columns that you want integrated. And then data replication is scheduled into the Lakehouse using the standard Business Central job queues, and you can schedule that to run however often you would like. We typically run it about every 2 hours. It could be as often as an hour as well. That will actually write data either on your initial load, all the data in a set of partition files, or on subsequent loads, the differentials or the differences, changes since the last time the integration has run, to files in the Lakehouse file storage area. So next, what needs to occur is the Python notebook needs to be run, and that is what will actually take your data, do any transformations on it that need to be done. Things like adding columns, potentially primary keys, integration dates and times, things like that, and land that data then in the Lakehouse table section. And as new files appear or files are deleted, let's say that you're adding new tables to your extract, or you're removing tables from your extract, you're changing columns on those, the notebook reacts to that in an appropriate way. And either adds those tables, deletes those tables, updates the schema in those tables. Then once the notebook runs, and we typically schedule these to run depending on the client's capacity in a staggered way. We'll talk about optimizing the schedules towards the end of the presentation as well. But you want to make sure that we're not, writing data and loading data at the same time. Then the semantic model is built on top of the lakehouse as well. And it could be multiple semantic models. Let's say you have a sales organization that just wants to deal with its sales data, and you may have an operations department that just wants to deal with operational data, things like inventory and warehousing. You can certainly build those separate models based on the same lakehouse. The semantic model is what actually allows you to derive the relationships within your data and drive that up to the Business Central, or excuse me, to the Power BI interface. So Power BI understands those relationships between like sales invoice headers and sales invoice lines when you're actually building your dashboards and your reports. The data in the lakehouse, for the most part, is agnostic of those things and is essentially just tables with data in them. Moving on to the Dataverse integration. Again, this is native to Business Central, so this is not an app that comes from AppSource or anything like that. You simply can search for assisted setup in Business Central, find the Dataverse connection setup, and walk through the steps. Over here on the right, you'll see the UI for the Dataverse, and you do need to select the environment that you want to integrate to. Typically, when we are doing Dataverse integrations for clients, we will have those environments mirror their Business Central environments. So production, sandbox, and development will set up Dataverse environments that mirror those three, link them in the Business Central admin portal, and then also set up the integration to those environments here. Once that's done, over in the Power Platform environment portal, you'll need to enable the link to Fabric option for that particular environment. And then within the Fabric Lakehouse, you can create that shortcut to Dataverse. We'll look at that in a second. This integration, just the base Dataverse connection integration, sets up what I call reference or base entities, the data that you would need to also then further integrate transactional data. In the case of Business Central, that would be things like sales or CRM data going over to dynamic sales. So you get vendors, customers, payment terms, shipping methods, things like that with this connection set up on a set of tables and fields within those tables that are predefined. You can change those mappings and you can customize them a little bit, but it's a little bit more involved, in my opinion, to do those tweaks and changes to this integration than it is for the BC to ADLS extract and data dump, if you will, into Fabric or ADLS. So then on the Fabric side of this house, you simply go into the Lake House, say Get Data, and new shortcut, and select Dataverse. And there you can see the interface that you are presented with. You do need to sign in with an organizational account at this point to enable that shortcut. So one thing to note then, when that data is coming in, right, into Fabric, it is actually, you are contacting Business Central as this user. So that user's permissions in Business Central are what's going to be available for you to bring in to Fabric. So you need to be mindful of that this is all running, this data is being integrated in the context of that user, both from a Fabric perspective for their workspace access, as well as a Business Central aspect from a permissions and licensing standpoint. Now, one thing to note that is kind of nice about this is since both Fabric and Business Central are tied to the same intratenant, when user's query, right, that whatever that user is, when a query is issued from Fabric back in using this type of connection, that particular user's permissions are going to be honored. So they're not going to be able to get at data that they don't have access to. And lastly, we'll touch on the web API integration. The way that we have set these up is to create an Azure Function app that calls the web APIs. Now, these may be the default APIs like I've shown there, or they may be a set of APIs that you or a partner has created for you to get at data in almost real-time fashion. We'll create that Azure function that runs in an Azure subscription and interacts with that web API using well-established and known RESTful patterns. And then a pipeline is created within Fabric Data Factory that can call that Azure function, usually in a scheduled manner, but it could also be triggered by different events in Fabric or from a notebook as well. Now that integration is near real time because every time that trigger runs, it's querying into Business Central and saying, give me all the latest data, give me all the latest data. And it's landing then over in Fabric. You can set that potentially to write directly to the Lakehouse tables or to files. And then that pipeline, then once those tables have been updated, can automatically refresh a semantic model. One caveat to this, or not even caveat, but just something to be aware of, is that Azure function is going to need to call those set of RESTful APIs using most likely an Entra application or a service principal. So all those calls and those interactions are going to be running in the context of that service principal. So you lose a little bit of what the user's permissions are flowing through to Business Central to ensure what that user has access to. So that service principal then needs to be secured using the permissions in Business Central that are appropriate to what the majority of the audience over in Fabric or in Power BI or whatever your analytics tool is going to be expecting. So let's walk through a simple data extraction workflow. So extract the data from Business Central using one of the three technologies that we've highlighted today. That lands somewhere in Fabric. Most likely, it's going to land in the Lakehouse, and most likely it's going to land in the files section of the Lakehouse. If you're not familiar with the Fabric Lakehouse, there are two sections, files and tables. Files are for your unstructured data. Tables are for your structured data. Tables are what semantic models can be built upon most readily. And those semantic models, then you can create your relationships to, you can add some DAX transformations to, and then those models can be exposed up into Power BI for consumption can be readily consumed, into visuals in Power BI. So the ETL process, the extract, can either be driven by a pipeline in Fabric using something like an Azure function to call a web API, or with a Dataverse shortcut, or it can be driven from Business Central using something like BC to ADLS, or maybe some other component from another partner or something that you build and push that data into Fabric. How the data gets into Fabric is your choice, whatever works best for your business. The tools in Fabric that you primarily use for the transformation and loading stages of your ETL pipe process are going to be pipelines and notebooks. Strongly encourage you to streamline this process and have that data staged in the Lakehouse, either in files or tables, or using a combination of files and tables like the solution leveraging BC to ADLS does, and using notebooks and pipelines to get the data from files into a shape that makes sense for your semantic models in the tables in the lakehouse. And then if you are doing anything with a medallion architecture in the warehouse, that lakehouse becomes sort of your staging data sync in the bronze layer. And then further processing occurs in Fabric using pipelines, notebooks, maybe even Gen 2 data flows to get the data from that lakehouse into a silver layer Fabric data warehouse. So some of the performance tuning that can be done in Fabric to ensure that your analysts are getting the maximum performance that they can get. And one thing that I want to mention here is the biggest performance gains that we've seen between some of the data warehouse solutions that our clients have had in place when working with Business Central data in the past and what we've been able to implement for them within Fabric is making sure that those semantic models are direct lake models, that they're leveraging the new direct lake mechanism rather than imports or direct query within Power BI. That's the single biggest performance gain that we've seen. And our clients, MePod in particular, has seen about a 500% increase in their report performance by ensuring that everything they're doing from a semantic modeling perspective is supported by Direct Lake. Now, it's not one-to-one with some of the models that they've built in Power BI Desktop, but it's getting there and it's getting there very fast. A lot of the features that they were missing were actually just released into either preview or GA during the Fabric conference, and they've been rapidly implementing or redoing their semantic models that were using import to use Direct Lake. One of the techniques that I previously mentioned, obviously, is using the lakehouse just for your bronze layer and then your silver and gold actually being on top of a true Fabric data warehouse. This is where, as I touched on earlier too, the scheduling strategy can be very important. We've seen clients run into issues where if they are running their extract from Business Central, let's say every 2 hours, and their Fabric notebook is running also every 2 hours, and it's the same 2 hour block. At the same time, you have data writing and you also have data reading and then writing to other areas. It doesn't cause anything like deadlocks, but you may be missing, data may not be landing where you think it is when you think it should be, put it that way. So we always try to schedule these things in staggered blocks between the two systems if BC is pushing data into Fabric. And then Fabric provides, the Microsoft Fabric team provides a Fabric monitoring dashboard that I strongly encourage everyone who's doing anything with Fabric to make sure that they implement that solution within their Fabric environment. It gives you a very good window into how your capacity is being utilized and which processes are using up your Fabric capacity and when they are consuming that, which can be very critical from a monitoring and cost efficacy standpoint. So the reporting tools used in Fabric, obviously the primary one is Power BI. That's going to be your default tool. But we have definitely implemented Fabric warehouses with BC data in them and mashed up with lots of other data from around their enterprise for clients that are very heavy users of Tableau. And we've done that using the Lakehouse SQL endpoint or the Fabric Data Warehouse SQL endpoint, either one, depending on what they actually want to visualize within Tableau. If we're talking about a medallion architecture, it's almost exclusively the gold layers Fabric Data Warehouse's SQL endpoint. Obviously, Power BI has very powerful drill through capabilities in their visualizations. And when we talk about Business Central data or ERP data being part of that visualization, This allows C-suites and executives to be able to actually drill in if they see a problem area, maybe within a KPI, down to those actual down to some of that actual transactional data, should they have the access to it, seeing things like individual orders or invoices that may be past due, those types of things. Actually having financial analysts and controllers being able to drill into those things from a robust dashboarding perspective and from a UI that they're used to, whether it's in Power BI or maybe you have those Power BI reports exposed in Teams or via a Power BI app that they're used to using that is then exposed in Teams. However they're used to dealing with that, it allows them to get into that data without having to go into the system of record, in this case, Business Central. Another fascinating capability of Fabric that was released at the Fabric conference was opening up Copilot in Fabric to all Fabric users, no matter what capacity they are on. It originally you needed to be on an F64 Fabric capacity to unlock Copilot features, which is pretty large. That's $8,400 a month if you're on a PayGo subscription. But now even all the way down to F2, which is $500 a month, you can leverage Copilot features, ask questions of your data, get assistance with Python notebooks, get assistance with building your warehouses or querying your warehouse, tweaking SQL queries that you may be issuing against those SQL endpoints in your warehouses with the full power of Copilot. Having Copilot actually assist you in building your reports, just telling Copilot, I need a report with these visualizations on this data summarizing over this time period, and having Copilot pull that together for you, asking you what you think and tweaking it along the way to production with an AI assistant is extremely powerful, and we've had very good success with that with several clients now, especially since it was unlocked and is available to anybody who's using a paid Fabric capacity. So, some conclusions and key takeaways as we're getting close to the 45-minute mark here. Effective use of Fabric can really revolutionize your data warehousing approach. It allows you to bring multiple sources together. As I mentioned, our data analytics team is very platform agnostic and works with clients to meet them where they're at from a data estate perspective. So we have Fabric implementations that actually leverage Snowflake as the data warehouse, pipelines for getting data in and out of that, and then also bring Business Central data in to Fabric and the Lakehouse, and then you leverage Power BI to actually visualize that data across all kinds of different sources. You can absolutely bring in, let's say, weather data from your preferred weather data vendor and mash that up and look at maybe transportation costs or maintenance costs of equipment for certain days, and then combine that with weather data. It makes that process a lot simpler than it used to be, having to combine maybe different web services and get developers involved to then eventually land that data in a database somewhere. You can actually do that now in Fabric with a much more visual and intuitive interface. And even the data analysts can get involved in that process because of the collaborative and team-based nature of Fabric. Adding your Dynamics 365 data into that mix can greatly enhance your team's efficiency, not having to work with necessarily a D365 developer to get data out. And it can optimize the management of that data because of the cross-functional nature of the Fabric interface.